Hi, this is Anna Imagination with a Healing Garden. I want to take a minute and talk about self love this morning. There is a perspective on self love that I found when I was doing my own mental work, and it's come up again with a few people that I've been speaking to, and it's not a common perspective, so I really want to share it with everyone. When there's a lot of self hate going around, there's a lot of self hate. It's something we are all almost guilty of. We are our biggest critic. We are hardest on ourselves. We are unforgiving and merciless on ourselves. We make a small mistake and then we have these voices in our head where we just scold ourselves all day long. And then our fear system builds up. We have panic attacks, we have anxiety, we have numbness, dissociation, a lot of things going on. We have overreaction, we have people or things running around, we have us running around, doing things, taking action, trying to put hands on. And that is just the overactive fear system, basically doing everything it can to keep us safe without having any idea how to keep us safe. It's absolutely a feeling of not being in control. And that gets projected onto the fear system, which then does everything in its power to try and keep you safe without having any idea how to do it. So desperate times calls for desperate measures, and the fear system ends up overdoing everything. This is where you'll stalk an ex, or you'll stalk somebody, you'll check their messages on their phones to see who they're texting. It's overvigilance, hypervigilance, hyper aware. It's internalizing so much. It's hearing something and then, or even seeing it on a Facebook wall and then immediately assuming it's about you and you internalizing it and turning it into your own story. That's all your fear system working. And where that's coming from is your fear system doing everything it can to keep you safe. But what people don't realize is that is actually an act of self love. It is one of the purest forms of self love. The fear system absolutely adores you more than anything else. There's just, its entire existence is revolving around you, keeping you safe because it loves you. It's extraordinary. It's very, very powerful. It's when you do the healing and you get to the end of it, there's that moment where you don't need the fear system anymore because you have your boundaries and you have your defense system. The fear system is only activated when you don't use boundaries and defend yourself. So when you start to defend yourself, you build up confidence, you build up, I need to clarify this because you don't build up. Those are emotional consequences. When you use a boundary, the emotional consequence of using a boundary is confidence, self-esteem, pride, safety. Safety. And so that communicates to the fear system that it doesn't have to freak out anymore. Now, it's not just that. It's the boundaries are set. The defense system goes, well, what am I doing with this gigantic metaphorical sword? And then that's where the soothing comes in. That's where you need to step down and or approach the fear system and say, it's okay. It's going to be all right. Self-soothe, reassure, validate, empathize. Empathize is the key there. So you use empathy to basically validate everything that the fear system feels. The fears are valid. You had a traumatic past. It's not illogical. It's highly logical. It's acting off of past data. So the fear system is absolutely highly logical, and it's no longer needed. We have a million, our minds are amazing. We have these things inside of our mind that is a massive catalyst, like a series of events that signals for the next event to occur. A occurs, boom, that needs to happen, that needs to happen, that needs to happen. And it just bounces back and forth with these signals that tells us in what order everything needs to happen. And that process builds up defense, builds up fear systems, builds up invasive perspective, creates mental illnesses. All so we can stay safe in an illogical, unsafe environment. An illogical, unsafe environment. The problem is, there is nothing to turn it off. Nothing. There is no catalyst that then signals it off and tells it to, okay, we're good now. We don't need it anymore. We're out of the situation. You can turn it off now. It doesn't do that. It does not do that. That is where conscious awareness, you, the ego, needs to step in and manage this machine in your head and do it for it, because it won't turn it off on itself. So that's it. It's just an archaic Ice Age defense mechanism built off of pure self-love and safety agendas without an off switch. So you need an off switch. The only off switch that the subconscious mind comprehends is logic. But we are not living in a logical world. Not at all. So there is nothing in your subconscious mind that is processing safety, because everything is pretty much illogical nowadays. I have lots of reasons for that. I'm not going to get into that. The point is, it is illogical. And that produces a lot of unknowns, because where there is illogic, there is unpredictability, which leads to a fear of the unknown. So now you've got a fear system inside of your head going, I can't predict anything, because everything around you is illogical. And you have this amazing deep sense of logic inside your subconscious mind that knows it's illogical, which is why your fear system keeps responding to a bunch of unknown, undefined irrationality. So the formula to resolve this looks like this. Soothe your fear system. 4 parts to this. Empathy is the most important. I'm going to say that until I'm dead. Empathy is the most important. It's also the one that's most forgotten. Validation is the next important. Everyone has these 2 down. Reassurance and soothe. Soothe and reassure. Now, everyone does the soothe and reassure for the most part, but they forget empathy and validation, and empathy is the big one. A lot of parents are picking up validation when it comes to soothing their children, but they keep forgetting empathy. Empathizing with a self-empathy is really vital to this. This is the core linchpin of all of this. The fear system must have empathy with it. So when you soothe the fear system, that calms it down. Now, if you are self-hating, that's going to do the opposite. The opposite of soothing your fear system is self-loathing. So the more you hate on yourself in your mind, the more your fear system is going to go into hyperactive and just do a whole bunch of stuff. Now, I want to show you something, because this is really, 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 really important. Your beautiful subconscious mind, the cognitive core processing part, isn't sentient. It's a computer that just collects data like an AI, and it has 2 functions. It has an input and an output. The input takes all of the data, processes it into a behavior. Takes in the data, puts out a behavior. It takes data from 3 sources. What you hear from outside, what it hears inside, as in what you say to it, and what you think. So it's what others say, what you say, and what you think. Those 3 sources go into the subconscious mind and processes it into a behavior, and then spits out the behavior. This is where, if you change your thoughts, change your words, and use boundaries to prevent what other people say around you, the data won't go into your subconscious mind, so it won't be processed into a behavior. And because the subconscious mind is so logical, it will immediately determine if the data it's receiving is negative or positive, and create a corresponding behavior to either protect you, keep you safe, make you happy, or allow you to run the show. And in most cases, especially if you are in a negative environment, it's going to make sure that you are safe, and it won't let you run the show because it's got to keep you safe. That's its override system. So every time you think or you say out loud a scolding behavior for yourself, self-loathing, the subconscious mind doesn't hear that as you attacking you. It hears it simply as an attack. So it immediately goes, oh, we need the defense system, or we need the fear system, we need to defend. So the fear system will immediately go into hyperdrive to protect itself against you. So every time you hate on yourself, you are actually teaching your subconscious mind that it needs to defend itself against you. It's literally a self-destruction cycle you're in. Every time you self-loathe, you are putting yourself subconsciously into a self-destruct mode, so that your fear system then responds keeping all of the boundaries up, keeping all of the defense, not the boundaries, keeping all of the defenses up around you to protect itself from you because you are hating on yourself. So when you are not soothing your fear system, if you are self-loathing and self-hating, you are actually telling the subconscious mind that there is a threat and a danger, and to keep that fear system up and going. The fear system is reactive. It's highly reactive. It lacks authority because authority comes from boundary setting. And had you been setting boundaries, you would have the authority and the fear system would be unnecessary. So the one massive thing that the fear system lacks is authority, which means it has no power, which means it has no control. So it's running all over the place, just reacting over and over again. That's your fight or flight, that's your war mode, that's your adrenaline rush, that's all the fear system. To stop this, you must stop the self-loathing. Stop the self-hate talk. Stop it. Because every time you think it or say it, it's going into your system and your fear system is saying, we need a behavior to defend ourselves. And you need to empathize, validate, soothe, and reassure your fear system. So that's going to calm your fear system down, and it's going to prevent any new computations going into your subconscious mind that's going to keep the fear system alert. So you need to soothe it and allow it to drop its guard. Now, once that happens, to keep the guard low, you need your boundaries up. You need to communicate. Now, boundaries are fun because a lot of people think that a boundary is supposed to keep you physically safe. Boundaries have nothing to do with keeping you physically safe. Boundaries are about keeping your perspective safe. Boundary setting has nothing to do with the person you're talking to. It has to do with how the subconscious mind works and how to compute data into a subconscious mind. Here is how it works. Somebody comes along and says, you can't do that. And so that data goes into the subconscious mind. It processes it. Got it. You can't do that. Let's spit out a corresponding behavior where you can't do that. Manifestation. But if you say, excuse you, yes, I can, the subconscious mind will pause and go, oh, we just got a new processing. Okay, yes, we can. Let's compute that and get you a behavior where you can do that. So all you're doing when you set a boundary is literally reprogramming and reestablishing the authority over your subconscious mind. That is all. You are keeping your subconscious mind on your side. You are keeping your subconscious mind obedient to what you want. Now, a fantastic side effect of using boundaries are the flood of emotional consequences that come with that, such as confidence building. Oh my God, yes. Authority, power. Actually, the power's over there, but you claim your authority. It's the realization of what you can do. You accept your ability to wield this protection around you. It comes with so much. In addition, the person, in most cases, will actually listen to what you're saying and respect you. If they don't, that's when you need to up the ante and basically distance yourself from people. Okay, you're that kind of person. You make me feel uncomfortable. You're not going to cheer me on. You don't get access to me. Block them. Distance yourself. Take a break from them. This is self-care. This is boundary setting. Limit how much access they have to you. After they prove to be gentle, nice, kind, supportive, then you can bring them a little closer. If they can't, keep them away. The more you do that, the more you protect your perspective. Now, the flip side of all of this, the part that no one ever talks about, is how abusive we all are to our own perspective and everybody else's perspective. There is a common practice that everyone is doing where we all think that a perspective, when it is shared with us, is something that we should and do rip apart, dissect, analyze, use it for ourselves, and then throw it away. That causes a lot of mental damage to the person who has the perspective. In fact, that is the problem with the world. That is the core problem with all mental abuse. That is it right there. I said it in one of my posts recently that mental health is actually a symptom of perspective health. This is why. Your perspective is your mindset, your imagination, your point of view. It's a lot. It's a lot. And it is built off of your 5 parts of your cognitive core, your identity, your values. It's your logic system. The thing is, a logic system is built up of millions of little data points. That is the accumulation of you. Everything from the moment you took your first breath up to the moment right now. Every day, every minute, every moment was a data point. Constant information that just stacked up inside of your mind that made you into the conglomerate of who and what you are now. A lot of it you've forgotten. A lot of it got archived. A lot of it is kind of still in your memory bank. The really traumatic parts are really in your memory bank. And the great parts are there. All of the parts are there. Where you went, who you were with, what was said to you, what you've done, what you desire, what you want, all your emotional experiences. Every bit of this is data, milestones that just made up you. This is your logic system. It's a lot of data. No one person, I've tried, no one person is capable of sitting someone down and saying, this is my logical system. These are the millions of data points that has all accumulated to form my perspective. When we say no one has walked in my shoes, we mean it. No one has walked in anybody's shoes. As a result, you have your very own unique logic system. A logic system is logical points built off of a million little premise. No one has access to that except you. So where you are right now in life, right this moment, you have all of this information that accumulates into you. That makes you the authority of your perspective. That makes you the official authority on your opinion, which means no one else is qualified to give their opinion on you, which means no one else is qualified to pull apart your perspective and tell you how you are wrong. Because unless they've done the entire research on all of your mile points and all of your logical system to determine all the functionings that have made you you, no one is qualified to dissect your perspective and tell you if you are wrong or right. The words right and wrong actually mean my perspective is right, your perspective is wrong. This perspective is right for my perspective, or that perspective is wrong for my perspective. It's 100% internalization. Every time you hear the word right or wrong, it's actually an internalization where someone is internalizing your perspective for themselves. But your perspective is not meant for anybody else except you. When you give your opinion, you are sharing the most beautiful, vital part of you. You are sharing your opinion, and my God, is it valuable because it is the representation of the story of your life, of which only you are the authority. In science, neuroscience, and in philosophy, and in psychology, truth does not exist. I'm not going to break down the illogical argument why that is the case here and right now. Not doing it. The point is, truth does not exist. It doesn't. So, who is anyone to sit there and tell you that you are wrong? All of the garbage that I say every day, all day long, on all of my podcasts and everywhere I talk is just my opinion. My agenda is to get people to think. My agenda is to free people's perspectives so that they have their own perspective back with their own ownership. If you need to use mine as an example or my words, fantastic, but under no circumstance do I ever expect or want anyone to just adopt my point of view. That's not what I want. I don't want a bunch of parrots. What I want is a bunch of authors, people who claim the authority of their life, saying, this is who I am, this is my mind, this is my perspective. Take it, use it, nurture it. Absolutely take care of it. Now, when you have your fear system going off, when you have boundaries going off, and you are now setting those boundaries, what you are doing is actually protecting one of the most beautiful, precious parts of your mind, your perspective, because you have built all of these things around it so that you can function logically in an illogical world. The last thing you need is some idiot coming along and telling you you're wrong and pulling it all apart because they've internalized your point of view. Your point of view is not up for grabs. Your point of view is not something that needs to be served out to others on a silver platter for people to rip apart and critique. It's not a meal you prepared for a food critic. You can deny people access to your point of view. I do it all the time. It's one of my favorite things to do. I will sit down and I'll have a conversation with someone and I will just ask them about themselves and I will just talk to them. And when they ask me for my opinion, I give them a disclaimer first, like, look, my opinion is not up for dissection. I'll share it with you, but I do not want your opinion on my opinion because it's not for you. My opinion is to keep me sane and functioning in this crazy world. It's not available for people to rip apart and dissect. And I strongly recommend everybody to take that point of view because we are in a world where we all think that a perspective is 100% for ourselves to rip apart, take apart, show people how they're wrong, and then basically pick out the parts that we want and walk away with it. The problem is when we do that to people, you now have a person who's struggling with something. Some of them are suicidal. Some of them are having a really bad day. Some of them are dealing with shit that we don't know about. And you just ripped apart their perspective and left the remains all over the place. And now they've got to sit there and pick it up. The problem is that person probably doesn't know how to handle boundaries. They probably over-internalize. The ones who overproject get aggressive and start screaming at you because you are ripping apart a perspective. I say you generically here. We all do this. I cannot explain to you enough. This is not accusatory at all. We all do this. This is a common societal practice that is expected of us. And we're so mindless about it that we're not changing it. And I didn't even realize we were doing it myself until I put so much work into my own perspective that I finally got to this point and I went, oh my God, this is my perspective. Holy cow, I had to really work hard for this thing. And then I had to ironclad it. And no matter how much I ironclad it, I had people coming along ripping it apart. And I could feel, this is before I learned boundaries and all that jazz, I could feel it falling down. And then I would have to spend weeks rebuilding it. And then I would go back out again to socialize and people would rip it apart. And I would have to rebuild it back up again. Self-doubt is the death sentence of a perspective. And if you aren't boundarying up, if you're not using boundaries, you are allowing anyone to just walk into your perspective and rip it apart. The problem is, a perspective is your identity. Your perspective is who you are. It is your sanity. It is your fear system. Well, your fear system's part of it. It's everything that is functioning you. And people are just ripping it apart and leaving you dysfunctional. When that happens, your fear system turns on, invasive perspectives get inside of you like a virus, and they create offshoots of invasive perspective. Now your subconscious mind is going, well, which of these do we have to follow, the invasive perspective or the actual perspective? And now you have cognitive dissonance. Now you have irrational logic crammed inside of your head. Now you have logical fallacy. That creates the emotion of cognitive dissonance. The cognitive dissonance is painful because we're logical. It can't handle illogic. So then, to keep you safe, it has to conform you into the insanity of somebody else's perspective. To do that, well, that's what mental illnesses are for. They are a fantastic thing that you can just put on and immediately conform to whatever crazy you are around. You have a mental illness because somebody around you is behaving illogically to your logical system. Get rid of the logical fallacy, and it goes away. You don't need it. It's quite extraordinary to watch. So, soothe the fear system. Stop the self-hating. And every time you hear yourself self-loathing, switch it over to self-empathy. Every time, always, constantly, day in and day out. Stop self-hating. Use your boundaries, not to physically defend your body, but to reprogram your subconscious mind. I'm going to say that again. Use your boundaries, not to protect your physical body, but to keep reprogramming your subconscious mind. Every time a can't doer says to you, you can't do that, you say, oh, yes, I can, because your subconscious mind needs to hear those words so it keeps the perspective in place. Because the subconscious mind, it's logical, it's not smart, will literally pick up the last thing it hears and program it. So make sure the last thing it hears is you telling it what you can do. So boundaries. Self-soothe. A lot of people think that boundaries are conflict. Yeah, I'm going to have to do a whole thing on boundaries versus conflict. Yeah, that's going to be a fun video. I'm looking forward to that. So no more self-loathing. Switch that over to self-empathy when you hear yourself doing it. Crank up that self-soothing, self-validation, self-empathy, self-reassurance. Use your boundaries. The boundaries will come in. You'll have some gorgeous emotions that are consequential to you protecting your subconscious mind. And then, yeah, that's about it. The whole thing just clicks right into place after that. Literally, it clicks right into place. Now, here's the thing. Once you start to do this, we see this a lot. Once you start to do this, you're going to have layers because there's layers of mislogic happening. So you'll get through the first layer and you'll feel great and you'll think you're cured and everything will be awesome. And then after about 24 hours, you'll flatline and then you'll feel depressed, feel numb, crash. That's because you hit a euphoric high and then you drop. That's normal. That's okay. Emotions are supposed to ebb and flow like the ocean waves. Just because you're healed, it doesn't mean you're going to be forever euphoric. What it does mean is that when you have a low point, you're not going to sink all the way down into the dire pits of hell. So, when you remove a layer of illogic and you get your brain back, that is when your subconscious mind feels safe enough to give you the next bit of information. So your subconscious mind will clear out the closet on the fourth level of the subconscious mind. New data will come forward, stuff that you now can process, and it will rise to the surface. That's when you'll suddenly remember shit that you forgot. You will probably, most likely, remember past trauma that you completely forgot about, and suddenly you're going, oh my God, what is this thing in my head? It's normal. It's because you can handle it now. You've got layers of that shit down there. You know you're healed when you clear out all of the logical processing and everything is aligned logically and nothing surfaces for a long time at all. And you go through life and nothing surfaces. That is when you know you're healed, is when finally nothing else is left to surface. So expect and anticipate that surfacing. When the surfacing happens, your fear system immediately kicks on for two reasons. First, there's change happening. Now we're back into the fear of the unknown. Something has changed. Change terrifies the fear system. The second thing is the fear system is going to hit the panic button, and you might go back into substance abuse if that's something that you struggle with. You might just go dissociated and shut down. You might go into a depression. Normal, 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 normal. That is because your fear system is experiencing a change of the unknown. It's scared, so it does that for defense because that's what it's been programmed to do. Back to the don't self-loathe, self-soothe, empathize, validate, reassure. Use the boundaries. Keep up those positive affirmations. That's what boundaries are, is your positive affirmations. And do it again. Don't hate on yourself when you have a setback. The reason why you hate on yourself is because, well, a lot of people, is because they don't understand that this is how the subconscious mind works. And this is a cycle. This is, by the way, shadow work. It's just correcting logical fallacy. Under no circumstances should you ever talk about your trauma. You don't need to. You are re-traumatizing your fear system. You are re-traumatizing your subconscious mind. You are re-traumatizing your ego, your conscious awareness. And you are most likely traumatizing your therapist. Do not talk about the trauma. It's not relevant. You can have two people. Both of them experience the same trauma. Person A has a stable perspective. Person B doesn't have a stable perspective. They experience the same abuse. The person who has a stable perspective will be fine and they won't process the trauma. The person who has an unstable perspective will. It's not about what happened to you. It's about your mindset. It is about you fortifying your perspective. I'm going to say it again. Mental illness is a symptom of perspective health. So if you have an unhealthy perspective, yeah, if your perspective health is poor or abysmal, you're going to absorb and internalize the abuse that happens to you. If you have a healthy perspective lifestyle, you're not going to internalize any of it. It is the internalization that causes the abuse. Internalization and projection is our learning system. Our internalization and our projection is actually how we learn. And we don't know this. A lot of people don't know this. We think it's mental illness, and it's not. It is how we learn. When trauma happened, it switched it around so that instead of internalizing mathematics, it began internalizing horrible behavior because we didn't have boundaries in place. When you use boundaries, you keep your internalization process where it needs to be. You're supposed to internalize mathematics, internalize logic, internalize history. But we're not internalizing life lessons. Now we're taking traumas and internalizing those because that is our learning system. So whether or not we project or internalize is actually our learning system. It is our debate system when we are learning something, and it is our ability to process data. However, when we have no boundaries, when we have a low or poor or abysmal perspective health, that gets confused and we start internalizing things that we never should have internalized, which is where trauma occurs. So when you use boundaries, when you have a healthy perspective, it doesn't touch you, which is why two people who experience the same trauma, one will be fine, the other won't. It's because one of them has an unhealthy perspective. I need to come up with something other than that because the perspective itself it's the overall health it's your perspective health. It's not the perspective itself, it's your perspective health. You can have poor perspective health or abysmal perspective health. You can have any kind of gray area perspective health. But this is all new. Well, it's not new stuff, it's old stuff. It's stuff that was taught in Alexandria by Plato. People just forgot about it. So once you understand your own level of perspective health and you start taking care of your perspective health, everything fixes itself. And it's so beautiful because it's all automated. It is designed to do this. It's so automated. You just need to know which levers to push in the right order, which is what triadic healing does, is it literally pushes all the right buttons in the right order so that boom, 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 and it just takes care of itself. But you have to understand perspective health. So no more self-hating, self-soothe with the fear, boundaries up for your safety, for the perspective health safety, not for the persons in your life. And that is a solid place to start. Self-care, I hate the word self-care because it's really, really off the mark. It's not give yourself a spa day. Self-care is literally soothing your fear system. You are seeking to ground yourself. Go back to your I. I call that the I of I. Philosopher's compass. You have three parts of your identity. You have the I of I. That's you. You have the U of I. That is your point of relativity. Those are your relatives. But if you have really bad relatives like I do, that's not a good point of relativity. So now I have my partner. My partner is solid. He is a mirror of me. Your point of view, your U of I needs to be a mirror of who you want to be. It needs to be your idol. If you have somebody who you admire, that becomes your point of your U of I, your point of relativity. For me, it was Abigail Adams for a very long time. So, oh my God, my piano is named Abigail for Abigail Adams. So Abigail Adams was my U of I. She was my ethical compass. Yeah, she was my ethical compass. Yeah, Abigail Adams was my idol. So when my parents and my family were garbage, I used Abigail Adams as my point. So I always knew where I belonged in relativity to Abigail Adams. And then there's the I of I, which is me. That's the you. That's the I of I. The third part is your community. These are your friendships. This is your networks. These are your resources. Really, really important. This is your imagination, because all your resources come from your imagination. So you have your three parts. Now, all of these things together make up you. They make up the identity. So when I say ground yourself, you are going back to your original perspective health of who you are, what you love, what are your resources, what you value, what you love. This is you grounding. This is your safe place. This is you going back to your you of I to re-stabilize and cleanse your perspective of all the invasive perspective that you got. So when you venture out, when you go to your job, and all these people tell you all of their opinions, that's data going into your brain. And your perspective is taking all of that in. Your subconscious mind is taking all of that in and dumping it into your cognitive core processing. And that's adding to all of the noise. So when you get home and you need to ground yourself, you're just cleansing all of their opinions out of your head. And to do that, you need to remember what your opinion is. You need to solidify yourself in your perspective. So the me time, I call it the genie bottle. I imagine myself, I love this is me. I imagine myself, a genie, magically going into my bottle of awesomeness. And then I get into the bottle of awesomeness and it's this cocoon of glass. And I'm like, yes, I'm a genie. This is my world. And that allows me to completely push out anything that is not me, my partner, and my resources, my imagination, hence the genie bottle. And that grounds me in, oh yes, this is my logic. This is my truth. Remember, it is all about your logical system. And all of these other people coming in telling you their opinions invades that. It's a virus, and you need to cleanse it out. So that's what you do when you're grounding. It should be recharging you. When it recharges you, you are taking in your own energy, your own newness. You are surrounding yourself in love. So you should feel grounded. You should feel recharged. That is self-care. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Those are your four there. I'll go do them. I am taking case studies. It's $500 a week if you want to be one of my case studies. It's where you get 24/7 hands-on with Triadic Healing. And we start digging through your subconscious mind and we restore your perspective health back to the you-ness of you. And we solidify you. That is what my case studies do. And just like forewarned, all of the case studies I do, I collect the data and then I anonymously use that information. Your privacy is 100% protected. And I use that data so that I can basically tweak Triadic Healing. I also have a group class that is a lot less intense, and it is basically my beta Triadic Healing, and that is $150 a month if that's something you're interested in. That is information, that all that information is at Authenticity, link my Linktree account below. Take a look at that. And that will get you everything you need if you're wanting to participate in Triadic Healing. So it's a case study or my group. My group is called the Philosopher's Fountain. And those are the two options right now for Triadic Healing. That's it. So thank you so much, and may the kindest of words always find you.